The Dakota signed lots of treaties, but the Americans could not pay most of them due to the Civil War going on at the same time. The first treaty says that the Americans could have 20 by 20 miles of land for the technology of the Americans, which was new to the Native Americans at the time. The second treaty says the Dakota should give more land but receive less resources and money. The third treaty was practically the same, but for more land, but not for more money. After 5 more treaties like these, the Americans offered a treaty that says for all their land, they could receive money and resources paid over a period of 50 years, and the Dakota could live on a piece of land next to the Mississippi River. The Dakota did not know how to read English. They only knew what the Americans told them. The Americans said that the father of America, President Lincoln, could drive them to the hills of the West. The Dakota had no choice, so they ended up saying yes. When the Dakota signed the treaty, the Americans said that they would have to sign another treaty. They said that it was to have a copy of the transaction in case they lost the actual copy and to keep record. But what the treaty really says was that the Native Americans owe a payment of 75% of their money because they were hunting all the animals that the Americans deserved. To even further deduct the money they would get, they were actually only supposed to be paid the interest. And it was to be paid over 50 years, which practically gave them $1 a year. We have waited a long time. The money is ours, but we cannot get it. We have no food, but here are stores filled with food. Quote by Little Crow. Due to the treaties the Dakota signed, they cannot hunt. They could also not buy food because they are not getting paid. The Dakota, after signing all those treaties, expected a payment. When they went to receive the money, the Americans burned the money, killing a few Dakota. The Americans brought many illnesses, like smallpox. Smallpox killed almost 75% of the Dakota. The Dakota were starving, dying of viruses. All the Dakota hated the Americans, which caused a few Dakota to steal. 5 Dakota were hungry, so they went to a farm and found some chickens. They were laughing about the sounds the chickens made and eating the eggs when a woman from the nearby barn started to scream at them. The woman tried to dismiss the natives, but she couldn't get rid of them. Then the woman ran out to the natives screaming and yelling and attacked one of them with a broom. The others were laughing at the one who was being attacked by the woman. The native who was attacked killed the woman, and they ran back to the leaders to tell them what happened. The war began August 17, 1862. When the Dakota did not have enough food for the winter, they were very hungry because the crops had been poor that year. 4 Dakota hunters killed 5 white settlers in Acton Township. The Eastern Dakota were pursued into assigning large tracts of land to the United States in a series of treaties signed in 1837. Chief Little Crow led the Dakota. Little Crow agreed to continue attacks on American settlements to try to drive out the white settlers. Henry Sibley led 1,200 troops against the Dakota in Minnesota and pursued them into neighboring states. The following year in the series of punitive expeditions. During the Dakota War of 1862, there were some battles like Battle of Birch Coulee. It was one of the first battles. The battle started because a group of 200 Dakota warriors rounded up and ambushed a camp that lasted one day. The battles of New Ulm, also known as the New Ulm Massacre, were 2 battles between the Dakota men and European settlers and military men. In New Ulm, Minnesota, the Dakota forces attacked New Ulm on 2 separate days. After the second attack, the city was evacuated. The Battle of Fort Ridgely was the second battle of the New Ulm Massacre, but in this battle more than 600 Dakota soldiers fought, and it was one of the largest battles for the United States. It turned out with the victory of the United States. At the Battle of Wood Lake, Henry Sibley and his forces camped near the shore of Lone Tree Lake. The Dakota soldiers had planned to ambush Sibley's forces. When the American soldiers were close, the Dakota opened fire and began the battle. The Battle of Redwood Ferry began with a surprise attack on Lower Sioux or Redwood Agency. Captain John S. Marsh, in command of Fort Ridgely, led 54 men into the agency to investigate. When they got there, they found a Dakota named White Dog. When the captain asked him a question, White Dog opened fire and jumped into a bush. Finally, the United States was able to pull enough volunteer soldiers, the lack of soldiers was due to the Civil War, to win the Battle of Wood Lake, the Dakota releasing nearly 300 captives. The name of this battle is the Battle of Wood Lake. In this battle, the Americans had many volunteers. They didn't have many volunteers because most of the soldiers were in the Civil War at the time. After the war, the Dakota were held at a camp in Fort Snelling. After the trials, which Abraham Lincoln attended himself, 39 men were hung in Mankato, which is still the largest single hanging in the U.S. to this day. The Dakota women and children were held in an encampment to starve to death or to die to smallpox. All treaties revoked, many of the natives were brought west, not only the Dakota, but also others who didn't participate in the war, named the Trail of Tears. Many of the Dakota starved to death, and nearly all of the elderly died. The government paid hunters to find and kill escaped natives. Little Crow was killed, and his bounty was paid $500. And remember, that was a lot of money at that time. Today, the Dakota of Midwest and Canada marched from Flundu, South Dakota, to Pipestone, Minnesota, in a ceremony. Their journey is a way to commemorate the largest single-day mass execution in U.S. history when 38 Dakota men were hanged and killed. The Dakota also help tell the story of the Dakota War and teach people about history of the state.